Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. I am back from Arizona. Had the owners' meetings, yielded plenty. And we've talked about it all week long, not just on this podcast, but on television and 2 to 6 and 10 to 2 and everywhere else. So maybe let's push away from the table just a smidge on the Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft comments, and instead look at the football teams. We're going to take a look around the AFC East. We're going to talk to Sal Capaccio, who covers the Buffalo Bills also. We're going to talk to Brian Costello, who covers the New York Jets. But you people are going to be most enthused about the guest I'm about to bring in because I found him. I found that one person. Yeah, the one person out there who thinks your New England Patriots aren't dead yet. The rain will resume. Jim Miller, former New England Patriots quarterback, former Chicago Bears quarterback, once authored a 13-3 season for the Bears. He joins us now. James, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Now, of course, Jim Miller and Pat Curran have an outstanding show daily on Sirius NFL Radio. It's called Moving the Chains, and they are as plugged in and well connected to coaches, GMs, and players around the league as any show. And if you listen to them, you know the guests they have. And frequently, Bill Belichick will carve out plenty of time for both Pat and Jim. And I wonder what insight you have when you say that you believe that the Patriots will win the AFC East. Full disclosure, you said it to Karen Garegian from the Boston Herald first.
Yeah, well, I do. I think they've got ability to have a rebound season. I just think they need more offensive accountability, and why they went in the direction they did with Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien will have a big impact on that offense for the Patriots. And I don't just say that lightly, right? He had a lot of success there before, albeit everybody can say, oh, that was with Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. But look what he did down in the AFC South. Okay, he was the head coach of the Houston Texans for 7 years. They finished first in the division 4 times. All right, this guy's a very accomplished play caller, worked with numerous quarterbacks down there until they were able to land Deshaun Watson, and then unfortunately had to, we know how that story finished out there. But then he goes on to Alabama and has a lot of success there as a play caller as well. He's very tapped into the college game. He'll put new wrinkles into the offense, and he's got familiarity with Mac Jones. And I don't think, when you look at the losses of the Patriots this year on offense, fine, they lose Damian Harris, but they get James Robinson. I think they could always draft another running back, and I like the signing of Gesicki, and I think the offensive line will be just fine. They'll just have a lot more offensive accountability to really play complementary football with, I thought was, everybody will say Buffalo was the best defense. I could argue and say the Patriots was better because they scored a lot of points off of turnovers last year, and I thought that's where they were better defensively than Buffalo.
Could also raise you one, though, and say the Jets would certainly be in the mix with C.J. Mosley in the middle, Quinn Williams up front, the talent on the back with Sauce Gardner. That's the question, I think, that I've had posed to me, because I've said, look, they were 8-9 last year with negative offensive coaching, coaching on offense that was detracting from their ability to win. I don't know if any team on any side of the ball has really experienced the fact that the players are being put at a disadvantage weekly. And that's plainly what it was. You don't have to assent or agree or anything else, but they're going to go from that, having gone 8-9, to a plus coach, to a coach who will help them, who will start to tap into that stuff. So I think the Patriots are an 11-win team based upon where they were last year. But the bitch of it is the Jets, the Bills, the Dolphins. Can you still extract 11 wins when you certainly are going to have third or fourth best quarterback in the division and probably the fourth best array of offensive weapons, at least high end?
Yeah.
At least high end.
Yeah. Well, I like the signing of Juju Smith-Schuster. I think he's going to help them, as I think Gesicki will, because I think Bill O'Brien's going to know how to utilize those players. And we'll see if they end up adding another receiver here in free agency. But I hear you. I do think the division's better. You could argue that Buffalo could potentially take a step back. I mean, there's a lot going on when you lose, a great middle linebacker that they lost. Granted, Poyer comes back, but McDermott's taken on all that defensive accountability now on his shoulders. And then offensively, Josh
With
Allen.
Leslie Frazier having gone, yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously Josh Allen's got to stay healthy and he's got to quit playing recklessly. There's still a lot of unknowns about Miami. I actually think their best signing is probably Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator.
Agreed.
Yeah, he'll bring a level of defense that's going to be problematic in my opinion, and then we'll see if they can stay as explosive on offense with a healthy Tua Tagovailoa, which is a big if, I think, for them. And for the Jets, obviously, I think we all assume Aaron Rodgers is going to arrive there. All right. But again, I'll go back to Vic Fangio. Vic was the defensive coordinator of the Bears. He knows how to play Aaron Rodgers. And granted, the Bears didn't win because they had no offensive accountability, but he kept the scoring down against Aaron Rodgers in division and knew how to play him very well. So I do think overall the division got better, but I think the Patriots have gotten better. And now with the offense, with somebody like Bill O'Brien and the accountability, the efficiency he'll bring on offense, I think the Patriots will be in every game and they'll have the opportunity to stretch it out to 11 or 12 wins, in my opinion.
Do you think Mac Jones is a good quarterback, or do you think he's good with potential to be very good top 10, or do you think he's manageable? Because right now, if you look at it candidly, he's probably between 12 and 22. Yeah, and that can slide all over the place. Do you think he's better than, for instance, a Tua Tagovailoa, or are they different flavors of the same bread?
No, I think he's better than Tua Tagovailoa. One, because he'll stay healthier than Tua Tagovailoa, whose injury history is pretty deep. I think to expect him. I mean, have you ever heard a quarterback taking jujitsu lessons just to learn how to take a hit? I've never heard that in my life. And Tua Tagovailoa is doing that. So I do think Mac is a durable quarterback. He had a good rookie season. They regressed offensively, and I think we all know the reasons why they regressed offensively. And now they're getting a quality coach that's going to know how to utilize his skill sets and what he's good at. And I think Mac Jones, his ability is from the neck up, and he's got more than enough physical tools throwing the football. And to go back, to me, Mac Jones was a steal with where the Patriots got him, because Carolina, they should have taken him at 7. They coached Mac Jones down in the Senior Bowl, and they passed him up. Look where Carolina is. That's why Mac Rule's out of a job.
And Shanahan, certainly, I think, as we've come to learn over the period of time, it was initially Mac Jones at 3, and then they moved off of him to Trey Lance. Again, I'm not saying that there's been a lot of number 3 overall picks. Sam Darnold, for instance, continues to be a man searching the wilderness for his game, but he can play if surrounded by the right circumstances. Jim, as a former quarterback and someone who played for Bill Belichick and played the game in a certain way, great toughness, great accuracy, and you were very much from the neck up guy. Mac Jones in 2022 was put in such a difficult situation that in his second year in the league, after being almost the offensive rookie of the year, he got edged at the end. He knew he was getting worse. By December, after he felt as if the team was trying to protect itself on the scoreboard, especially again in a game against the Bills, he started to be outward emotionally with his disgust. And it continued probably for 2 or 3 weeks. Not only that, but I believe that, I know that behind the scenes, I've had 2 sources tell me that Mac Jones was going outside the building or soliciting information from other people to say, are we doing this the right way? Is this the way this is supposed to work if we're doing this offense? And ultimately, Bill Belichick was so sideways about that he feels non-committal toward Mac still. Not because he can't play, but because I think that he believes he might not have the loyalty necessary or the leadership skills necessary to completely buy in. Where do you come down as a guy who played that position when you're tied to something that you're like, holy shit, this is not working. This was a horrible idea. At some point you would say something, wouldn't you? But Bill's holding that against him, it seems.
Well, I think but Bill has been quick to recognize too, where he's made mistakes with players. Bill, say, for instance, when he talked about Patrick Chung, right? Patrick Chung went to Philadelphia, then came back to New England. And Bill said he went back and critically thought about it and said, we didn't use Patrick the right way the first time. I mismanaged that situation as a coach. And I would think in my heart of hearts, obviously with a one and done by Matt Patricia, and that's no offense because I respect Matt greatly, but I think Matt Patricia was put in a bad spot last year. And I think everybody can recognize that now because you make a quick transition to Bill O'Brien that I think the Patriots are very fortunate to get back into that building. And for Mac, I go back to say the year Matt Castle was 11-5. Okay, I don't think anybody's going to say that Matt Castle is an elite quarterback in any way, shape, or form, but he can win you games, and that's been
Matt is a frequent co-host on this. Matt, he didn't mean it.
Yeah,
ahead,
well,
Jim. I'm kidding. He would say the same thing, Jimmy. I'm teasing.
Yeah, I think but you respect Matt because he goes on to Kansas City, and he's a winning starting quarterback.
Yep.
And so I think everybody understands, and I think Todd Bowles said it today about their quarterback situation. You don't need Superman underneath center, all right, but you certainly don't want Clark Kent either. All right, you got to have a guy who's got some skill sets about him and some savvy about him. And let's face it, Mac Jones can win you games if he's got the right guys around him so that he can just drive the car. And that's all he's got to do is drive the car, And I think, he's capable of doing that. He's shown that already, I think, in his NFL career. But now they'll have the offensive accountability and what's around him for him to have the ability to do that.
What I watch and am wary of as a Patriots observer, and if I were a Patriots fan, is the ongoing relationship between Bill Belichick and Mac Jones. If Mac feels he was tethered to a bad situation and is then punished for pointing out, hey, this is a bad situation, it's not helping me, and Bill holds a grudge on that, I think that the latter day player who was born in the 2000s or the late 1990s might push back a little bit more than somebody like you or me, born in the late 60s or early 70s. Bill says, go crap in the corner. You say, what color? So that's not going to exist, especially, I think, when you look at the landscape of the league, whether it's a Baker Mayfield or, we could run through all the quarterbacks who they get sideways, and the next thing you know, they're on to the next thing, or they take it very personally. How important is the relationship, all that said, Jimmy, between Bill and Mac Jones to get the team where they want to be?
Yeah, I think that's what this process is about, right? This is going to be part of it, is to repair that. All right, here you clearly had a player who was frustrated and upset. He wants to win as much as anybody, no different than Bill Belichick. And this is a move that is made to correct that, to get Mac Jones to commit to the Patriots, to get Mac Jones on board. Hey, this is what we're doing now with this offense. We realize it wasn't a good situation last year, and we're trying to correct that. And they're trying to get Mac Jones on board, and he should want to be on board. He just needs to go look at the numbers of Bill O'Brien, and I know he's well aware of it because he's got a relationship with him. And I think that's to get him recommitted and to get him excited that this year is going to be far different than last year. And that's what they're trying to correct.
We've had constant conversation here about Lamar Jackson and whether or not the Patriots not necessarily should sign him, but should at least go and kick tires on Lamar Jackson, see what exactly it would require to land him. My contention has been, on a logical standpoint, Patriots aren't going to spend $40 million a year guaranteed on a player who plays 12 games over the last 2 years, or a player who is the most electric and productive running quarterback in NFL history, but is an adequate to above average passer who feasts on bad teams and struggles a little bit against the better ones. That's the antithesis of things that Bill does. Additionally, you're going to give away draft picks or Mac Jones and a high draft pick to bring Lamar Jackson in, but yet it stays. So, and it's so active, the conversation. I think maybe I'm either in the minority or trying to use too much logic here. Should the Patriots be in on a player like Lamar Jackson? Would he drastically change the face of the Patriots in terms of their fortunes?
No, I don't think they will be. And I think it's pretty clear why other teams haven't jumped in. One, you have to have the appetite for that style of play. Okay. And how your offense is going to shift. Because God forbid, if the Patriots or any other team shifted to that style of offense, you're going to have to change probably who your quarterbacks are. That's what Baltimore was doing with Tyler Huntley, and they drafted Trace McSorley because they were going down that RPO road. So your backups got to be able to do that stuff too, if that's the direction you're going in. So to me, that would be a big shift and a fundamental shift for the Patriots that would be too drastic to overcome. One, your offensive lineman would have to change because you look at all the duo and the gap stuff that Baltimore runs, and just your style of offense overall. You go back to his MVP year, really it was all about the tight ends. And granted, I think the Patriots have the tight ends to do it, but it would just be a drastic shift. And then, of course, like you said, it's the durability issue. How can you fully guarantee a contract with a player who's got an injury history? He bet on himself last year and lost. And they've got a 4-8 record without him in there. And to them, they need him on the field. It's about availability. And again, why they're so hesitant. And I think other teams are so hesitant to give him a fully guaranteed contract. Nobody denies the talent of Lamar Jackson. Everybody loves him. It's just everything that comes with it that you'd have to invest quite a bit. And it would be a big fundamental shift, in my opinion, for the Patriots.
Am I being too much of a hater if I say that he's living off of that 2019 season to a large extent, when nobody knew what the hell he was capable of doing, and he came out and turned the league inside out? 36 touchdowns, 7 picks, runs for 1,200 yards. But since then, he continues to be the most electric player in the NFL at the quarterback position when he's on. But he's also been injury prone, and he had a 16 touchdown, 13 pick season. I don't know if he's been over 3,000 yards passing. So I keep saying to myself, the highlights are endless, but the level of consistency you get from, milk and white bread Mac Jones, where it's just basic, it's easier to bet on.
Well, it's interesting when you look at Baltimore. Think of Hollywood Brown. That's his buddy. All right. He wanted out of there. And he had, at one point, he had over 140 targets at him. They complain that they don't pass the ball because they're not good at it. All right. Look, their history shows it. They were the least explosive offense in the pass plays other than that 2019 season that you mentioned. That's a long time ago now. That's a long time ago for Baltimore, where their passing game hasn't been efficient as it needs to be. And all Baltimore is saying is, and they've offered him a pretty good contract, is that, hey, we need to see more. And that's why you put the franchise tag on him to hopefully he can answer all those things that we need answered, right? The ability to be a more consistent passer, the ability to line up an entire season for the Baltimore Ravens, especially down the stretch where they need him, so dearly in their offense and meaningful games that could potentially put him in the postseason. And then, of course, he's got to answer his postseason record. It's not good. Go look at his postseason record. He's got 1 win, and the other outings have been miserable from his consistency standpoint. So he answers those 3 things. I think nobody around the league would have a hard time paying him. But so those 3 things need to be answered.
Yeah, and that, I think, in a vacuum, yeah, everybody would love to have. I think only maybe Mahomes, Herbert, Allen. Certainly not Rodgers at this juncture. I mean, who else? Who else? All things being equal, would you say, I'd like to tether my wagon to him?
The one quarterback who I think is by far the lock is Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow, yeah.
Joe Burrow is probably going to get the contract of all contracts. I hear it's going to be over $50 million a year, and there's rightfully so. Go look at his postseason record. Go look at him in big games, and to me, he's like the unicorn at the position right now in what teams are looking for. I mean, that guy is flawless.
It'd be funny too to do a quarterback draft. Don't worry about, enter age into it, but don't enter contract, don't enter contract status, don't enter anything into it, and see where quarterbacks will go. Different than rating, which we all do all the time, but do the draft. Who would you take where? Where would Lamar go in a quarterback draft?
Well, I mean, I certainly would rate him above the quarterbacks in this year's draft. I mean, that goes for Bryce Young and obviously the young man at Ohio State, CJ Stroud. One, because, he is an electric player, but these guys have a lot of holes in them. I mean, if this was a normal draft, we'd probably have to go back to Tannehill. That was probably everybody considered just really a can't miss prospect. But for what Lamar has done out of Louisville, where he played under Bobby Petrino, and what he is now, he's an electric player. But in terms of the passing side of it, he'd still be down that list. He'd probably be in the top 10, but he'd be in the latter part of the top 10 because the consistency in throwing the football has to be much better.
Would you draft Lamar before Mac Jones?
Yeah, of course. I would draft Lamar before Mac Jones.
Would you draft him before? I ain't gonna do this. It'll take all friggin' day. Would you draft him before Jimmy Garoppolo? Would you draft Mac Jones before Jimmy Garoppolo?
That's a good question.
I think I've happened upon a Jimmy guy.
Yeah, because, you look at Jimmy, Jimmy was a second round guy, but, I think, and Jimmy's a winning quarterback here. That's a good question. Who would you want, Jimmy Garoppolo or Lamar? Both have an injury history, but their win percentage is pretty much the same. I think Jimmy's like 48-17 as a quarterback, and Lamar's like 46-17. So that's a good comparison. And both have an injury history, right? So that'd be a really debatable subject right there, because they both can win. You definitely can win.
I want you to talk to Pat Curran on Moving the Chains on Sirius NFL Radio about precisely that. Jimmy, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for the time. Can we do this again? I went on longer than I wanted. Well, than I told you I would, but it was great.
That's great. Always good to be with you, Tom.
You're the best. All right. We got Sal Capaccio from WGR in Buffalo. And we also have coming up Brian Costello from the New York Post joining us to talk AFC East. Thanks so much, Jimmy.
Yep, you bet. Have a good day.
You too. All right, we continue going around the AFC East with our friend Sal Capaccio from WGR in Buffalo. Are the Bills better now than they were when they were ushered out of the playoffs?
I think in totality, considering everything they went through emotionally, physically, how injured they were, I could make the argument they are. They have probably lost some talent, obviously, with Tremaine Edmonds. That's the big loss in the middle of their defense. They retained Jordan Poyer. They haven't really signed big-name free agents. They've had pieces here. But, Tom, I think that it's important to note, like, what that team was like at the end of the year with everything they went through, with all the, you can go all the way back even. It was such a trying year. You go back to the mass shooting that we had in Buffalo in May. Yep. And then you had the owner, Kim Pegula, in a medical situation with her, and we haven't heard from her all year. And we know that now, she's going through a medical event. And then you had, obviously, the weather situation, getting a game moved. Mm-hmm. And then you had the blizzard in Buffalo that literally people froze to death and were dying. And then you had DeMar Hamlin's situation. At the end of the year, I think the Bills were so emotionally and physically drained, they have to be better right now because of that.
That's the second consecutive year that the Bills have gone through really a tumultuous season. The first time around, 2021, it reserved itself for the very end of the year.
Yeah, that's right. 13 seconds it's going to live in infamy in Buffalo until hopefully they one day win a Lombardi, because I think what people in Buffalo really believe maybe that was their best look at it. And as you get older here and you have salary cap situation you have to manage on a quarterback now who's no longer on a rookie contract, you wonder if they'll get back to having that same look at it. Now, look, I think as long as you have Josh Allen, your window to win a Super Bowl is always there. Mm-hmm. He's that terrific, right? But it gets more challenging. So you're right. A couple of years ago in Kansas City, that was the year Bills fans and really the world thought, okay, they have this. They're going to host the AFC Championship game. Now, look, maybe the Bengals beat them like they beat the Chiefs.
Sure.
We don't know that. But I think that was the look that they had at it, and that's why it was so hard to take.
Josh Allen's so young still, and he's going to get better and better as he goes. But there are occasions, especially this past year, when you could lay the blame at his feet for some of the in-game failures, for some of the in-game inconsistencies that he would sometimes show. People in New England never see it. He eats the Patriots alive the way Brady used to with the Bills. But do you look at Josh Allen and say he's got a little bit to prove in 2023?
Josh, I think, has to prove something to people that he can maintain the level he's played, because he has gone through some injuries and he's had a little bit of inconsistency. But I think when you look at where those inconsistencies happen, Tom, it's because Josh tries to make every play. Yep. Josh tries to win the Super Bowl on every play. And he has to learn you can't do that. He's got Brett Favre in him. But where's the balance? I think that's what it's always the conversation in Buffalo. You never want to take that away from him, because that's what makes him great. But at the same time, it can hurt the Bills once in a while. you go to the Vikings wild game where the Bills
Yep.
and they go in the overtime. Josh doesn't have to throw that ball that winds up getting intercepted, but he's trying to win the game right there. And those are the things that he has to dial down. I don't think he has to prove anything to how great talented he is. He doesn't have to prove anything to the organization. They're all in on him, obviously. But I think to the rest of the football world, now you're saying, okay, you got to prove you can get to one if you want to be in the conversation with all these guys. Although I don't know if that's quite fair because it's so hard to get there.
Who do you think the second best team is in the AFC East? And whoever it is, have they closed the gap on Buffalo?
Currently, it's the Miami Dolphins. If and when the Jets get Aaron Rodgers, I would probably put the New York Jets above there. So let's assume that Aaron Rodgers is going to go to New York. I would put the New York Jets because I think that defense is phenomenal. They had the Rookie of the Year on offense, the Rookie of the Year on defense. They have Breece Hall, who's probably returning. They have Aaron Rodgers, obviously, when he gets there. They have closed the gap. They played the Bills tough.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to point out, despite the fact the Bills had a tumultuous season, things didn't look great on offense, even though they were still scoring points for most of the second half of the season, and the fact that the Dolphins and Jets were better, the Bills still won the AFC East by more games than any team won their division last year. 4.5.
And it was, throughout most of the year, certainly the most competitive division in football. I mean, the Patriots finishing at 8-9,
Yep.
and, along with the Jets, who struggled, but were obviously a team on the make. You look at this division and say, is this the best division in football?
I think it is. I think when you have a team, all four teams could say, they're going to be fighting for playoff spots no matter what. I think you can put the Patriots in there. I mean, nobody's going to discount the Patriots fighting for a playoff spot. What I think is wild, though, for 20 years we lived this existence in Buffalo where it's just in New York and in Miami, the Patriots just reigned over the division for 20 years. It didn't matter. Every year you knew you were playing for second place. Every year you were trying to play for a wild card. I think it's flipped now. I think it's the New England Patriots now looking up at three different teams in the AFC and trying to catch up to them because those teams have made strides. They've closed the gap. And like you said, there is definitely a quarterback gap between Josh Allen and currently the rest of the AFC East.
Do you think the Patriots, as you regard them from afar, are a team that looks dysfunctional, or was last year kind of a one-off? Look, they go 10-7, and the Bills just took care of business against them in 2021. But they went 10-7 with a rookie quarterback. Then they basically treaded water or went under a little bit last year. Do you anticipate from afar that this is going to be a better team with Bill O'Brien coming back and all the things that were bad last year, and they still finished 8-9, can be rectified?
I don't know about dysfunctional. I don't know if they're going to be that much better. I think the Patriots are going to be who they were pretty much last year, and I think this is a team that's going to be in the mix, fighting for a wild card spot. And I think that the head coach still coaches football like he's coaching the early 2000s, and I think that hurts the Patriots. As great as he is, look,
Sure.
I always say in my radio show, Bill Belichick is clearly the most accomplished coach of all time. No one can take that away. It doesn't mean he's always going to be the best coach out there. It doesn't. And I think there's been things that have happened over the last several years that show that he hasn't quite adapted, especially after Brady. I mean, mobile quarterbacks, not just Josh, have Justin Fields last year, Lamar Jackson. They've hurt the New England Patriots. I think that Bill has yet to adjust to that, and I don't see how they've necessarily adjusted this season to anything like that. The other part is the offense. Yeah, Mac Jones is a nice quarterback. Jacoby Myers walks out the door, and Juju Smith-Schuster is a nice player, but where's the high-end talent?
Right.
In this league, you got to have a number one true receiver. They don't have that on that team.
Yeah, you have to make somebody, whether it's a receiver, whether it's a tight end.
That's right.
When it was Gronkowski, whether it's a slot like Edelman,
right.
You need somebody who is going to make defensive coordinators say we're going to have to devote a player and a half to him. So to me, it's fascinating to watch unfold, and I think it's really a fascinating division.
I do
Thanks
too.
for doing this.
You're welcome, man. Big fan of your work. Great job.
Appreciate it. Same.
Okay.
Likewise.
Thank you.
All right, bringing in from the New York Post, our guy Brian Costello covers the New York Jets, has done it for a long time. How long have you been covering the Jets?
I have been covering the Jets for 12 years, Tom, and 12 years is the playoff drought. It's my fault.
Well, I think Woody shares some blame in that.
A little bit, but fans blame me more than Woody, I think.
You spent time talking to Woody Johnson on this Tuesday. What did you glean from the owner about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers?
Same thing that I've gleaned from everybody, Tom. They're just waiting. They're waiting and waiting. And Woody said he's anxious for it to get done, but they're trying to stick to the plan. I think Woody's the question mark. Does he get antsy and say, all right, give him a first-round pick, give him something? Does he push it along? Because I don't think Joe Douglas is going to blink. I think he's going to stand his ground with the Packers, but Woody could move it along, but he was careful. They're being careful with how they choose their words. Aaron Rodgers is on another team still. They have to be careful, but everyone's waiting for the trade to get done.
How drastically improved will the Jets be if they get Aaron Rodgers, given how good their defense is, given how good some of their young players are?
Yeah, I think it's drastic. I think it's 3 or 4 wins drastic. If you think about the Patriots game in Foxborough, right? It was 3-3.
Right.
3-3 battle to that last punt. If the Jets had a quarterback in that game, I think they would have won that game. And there's a few other games you pick out and go, okay, if the Jets had a quarterback there, they would have won that game. They were playing without a quarterback for most of that season, and that's a tough thing to do in the NFL. So I think Aaron Rodgers will drastically make them better. Even if Aaron Rodgers is a step below what he was, 5-6 years ago, I think he's still a major upgrade for them.
And even 2 years ago, he was the MVP.
He was MVP, yeah.
So you're talking about a guy who, like Brady, still at the top of his game later on in his career. How do you think Aaron Rodgers will navigate the New York media? He certainly never is at a loss for his own self-regard for his intellect.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to bother him too much now because he's under so much scrutiny. He does McAfee, and everyone dissects every word he says. When he did a press conference in Green Bay, all the ESPN shows dissected everything he said. So he's been in the fishbowl. The only difference, there's 2 things in New York that are a little different, right? Your personal life becomes much more of a story. We have page 6 at the New York Post, which helps pay the bills and does a great job. And if he goes to dinner in Manhattan, there's a good chance there's going to be a picture of him at dinner with his girlfriend the next day in the paper. I think that's probably different than Green Bay. And then the other thing is the back pages. After the game I talked about in New England, Zach Wilson, Thanksgiving was a few days later, we had a picture of a turkey with Zach Wilson's head on it. Again, not sure that's happening in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, right? So those things are a little different, but he's going to have such a honeymoon, Tom. People are going to be so happy that he's there that kind of stuff isn't going to happen until maybe December.
Yeah, right.
When things go, if things go downhill in December, then it could get ugly.
What happens with Zach Wilson?
You a Star Wars fan, Tom?
No, but I'm sure plenty of our listeners are.
Okay, Han Solo, at one point, they freeze Han Solo. He's frozen in carbonite.
Uh-huh.
That's going to be Zach Wilson. He's going to be frozen in carbonite they're for a year at least, maybe 2. I don't know. They can't do anything with him. Like, they can't cut him. He was the number 2 pick in the draft. Like,
right.
That's a substantial contract he has. They can't trade him. No one's trading for him. So then you're stuck with, oh my gosh, some people are like, oh, make him the number 3 quarterback. Well, that's extreme. You did take him number 2 years ago. You believed in him. They're hoping he can sit there, learn from Aaron Rodgers, who was his idol. So they have a relationship. Rodgers recruited him for his agency when he was coming out of college. So they're hoping Rodgers can kind of mentor him, help him, and just let him reset. Mm-hmm. Not being out there every time. He's going to get a lot of reps in the spring because who knows when this trade is going to get done. And even when it does, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be out there at OTAs a lot. He's going to get a lot of reps in preseason. Aaron Rodgers is not going to play preseason. Jets have an extra preseason game with the Hall of Fame game. So let him get all those reps, and then he's going to be frozen in carbonite once the season comes.
Is it mind-blowing to you that Zach Wilson is the 2nd overall pick and Sam Darnold is the 3rd overall pick have both been cast out to wander the wilderness?
Yeah. And selfishly, I look at it and go, when Sam got drafted, I was like, all right, the quarterback stuff is done. Like, I got 10 years. I always looked enviously at you beat writers in New England. You guys weren't counting how many completions people had in OTAs. Like, he was number 12. Were you number 12? Like, he was fine. Maybe the backup quarterbacks, but or across town, Eli Manning for all those years. The Giants didn't worry about it. I thought when Sam Darnold was drafted, all right, we got 10 years out of this guy. And then Zach Wilson, same thing. Zach Wilson, I knew from Sam Darnold it might not last, but yeah, it's shocking. Like 2 picks in the top 3, and both of them are gone.
Did you find it interesting that I think it was Joe Douglas made a point of, we're not going to court Lamar Jackson because we're negotiating in good faith here.
Yeah.
There might be a point at which they do have to pivot. I mean, I can't imagine that point comes.
Yeah, it's hard for me. I mean, I listened to Matt LaFleur today, the Packers coach, and he opened his session with basically a tribute to Aaron Rodgers, how wonderful he was, how much he meant to everyone in the organization, basically saying goodbye, and then talked about how excited he was for Jordan Love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do they turn back? I don't see either side turning back, right? How do the Packers can't have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, And the Jets can't have Zach Wilson as their quarterback, and there's no other alternatives. I mean, the Lamar thing, I still think it's a big ask with the guaranteed money and the 2 first-round picks. So to me, I don't see them pivoting. And I thought Joe Douglas's answer was pretty good to say it's not happening, guys, and with a good reason why.
How do you regard the New England Patriots right now? I mean, obviously they reigned for 2 decades,
Yes.
and now they're not moribund, but they're flagging
Yeah.
at a level of mediocrity that, even the Jets, when they sucked, would have been happy to have that.
Yeah.
But this level of mediocrity is uncommon. Is there a mood in New York, I would imagine, that relishes that there's 2 New York teams, quite possibly, and a Miami team all looking down at the Patriots in the division?
Yeah, well, Jets fans don't care about the Bills, but the Jets fans definitely are relishing that they feel like if Rodgers comes, they're now above the Patriots, right? And 2015 is the last time the Jets beat the Patriots. It's been a long time, and we write that stuff every year, and every year the Jets, especially since Brady's been gone, it's felt like, okay, is this the year that the Jets can beat them? And every year they find a way to lose. This year, the punt return was the most stunning one of all. Yeah. But, yeah, so I think when we get to that point in the schedule and it's Jets-Patriots, Jets fans are going to be really, really revved up for that one. I mean, it'd be a lot of fun if it was the first week of the season.
No doubt.
And Rodgers makes his debut against the fans will be out of their minds for that one. So, yeah, I think Jets fans right now look at it and go, oh, Patriots are a 4th team in the division.
Do you look at the Patriots as a team in disarray? I mean, relative to the normalcy that we've become accustomed to.
Yeah, you would know better than me. I don't think it's disarray. I always think Bill has control over everything. I just think they haven't made great roster decisions. I think he's missed on some people, and you just look at the roster right now, and it's not what it was. 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And the thing you always heard from the Jets coaches through the years is Brady patches up everything. Every hole on that team, Brady hides. And now you see, there's some. I think quarterbacks. There's some quarterbacks who can hide your issues, your holes on your team, and some that expose them. Most expose them, right? Mm-hmm. And now I think they're going through that. And the offensive coordinator thing last year was so bizarre, right? Because Joe Judge had just left New York, so he had failed in New York pretty miserably with the Giants, and then they're like, oh, he and Matt Patricia are going to be the offensive coaches. That was so strange. So maybe Bill O'Brien can bring some cohesiveness back to the offense.
Do you think the Jets can challenge for AFC supremacy? Not just AFC East, but challenge the Chiefs, challenge whoever else emerges.
I still think they're a notch below Kansas City and Buffalo.
Talent-wise, too?
Complete roster, yes. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Jets' offensive line, there's issues, right? There's time, right? We're talking in the end of March. They still have time to fix it. There's still a draft coming up. But the offensive line, there's issues. The receivers are good. It's going to be interesting what Garrett Wilson does in year 2. Can he make a leap to being, like, the guy? Can he? Because he had a great rookie year, but now he needs to make that leap. And defensively, Tom, they were very good last year, right? But they had some things that went their way.
Mm-hmm.
They were very healthy. If you look at their top defensive players, they all stayed healthy. Quinn Williams missed a game. That was it. Then if you look at the string of quarterbacks they played, it was pretty remarkable. Skylar Thompson with the Dolphins, Brett Rippon with the Broncos. They played Jacoby Brissett with the Browns before Deshaun came back. They didn't play a lot of elite quarterbacks. And so I think their defense was a little inflated last year, and it's going to be tough to duplicate the health for sure.
It plays a huge role for what defenses do. We saw it with the Patriots multiple times in the last few years. It's who did you beat and how did you beat them, especially really in that 2021 season. They saw a collection of teams that were either beat up when the Patriots got them or were without quarterbacks. And we saw them feast on the Jets to the tune of
look at the
50
quarterbacks.
points.
Look at the quarterbacks the Jets have put out there against the Patriots.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some crazy. Like Bryce Petty started 2 games against the Patriots. They've had like Luke Falk. Remember, started a game in Foxborough.
I've lost track of all of the Jets quarterbacks.
So and that was the only reason they scored was they took Brady out of the game, and what's his name? The guy that went to the Raiders. That went to the Broncos now.
Oh, Jarrett Stidham.
Jarrett Stidham came in the game and threw a pick 6 to Jamal Adams, or the Jets wouldn't have scored.
Yeah.
Well, so they played some bad quarterbacks. Yeah.
Quarterbacks strewn all across the NFL landscape. You might be getting one soon. Brian Costello, New York Post, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, that's a wrap. Great stuff from Sal, Brian, and of course, Jim Miller. Hey, check it out. Phil talked to Quentin Johnson, TCU wide receiver, on the next Pats podcast. So I want you to dip into that. Check it out. We did last week, Steve Palazzolo talking draft. Phil and I are diving headlong into the draft now with the owners' meetings behind us. Let's get into some football, huh? We'll still start to mind the drama, but we'll get into some football too. Have a great weekend. Thanks for joining.